Omega-3 is one of the most researched nutrients in existence. The evidence spans for cardiovascular health, brain function, mood, inflammation, eye health, and the list goes on. And it's one of the most popular supplements to buy in the world. Billions of dollars worth are sold every year. And yet, when I test clients, the majority of them have low omega-3 levels, significantly lower than they should have, even if they're taking supplements. Some of them aren't supplementing at all, but a lot of them are, and they've been taking fish oil for years. So what's going wrong? There are two problems. First is that most people don't get enough omega-3s in their diet, and we'll talk about why that is. The second is that a lot of the fish oil supplements on the market are either so low dose that they don't help, or they're in a form that the body struggles to absorb properly. In this video, I want to cover both of those problems, and I'll explain what omega-3 actually does, why it matters, and how to test whether you're actually getting enough. How to choose supplements that work, and specifically what to look for and what to avoid. Because in this category, the difference between a good product and a poor product is not usually obvious from the label. If you're currently taking fish oils, this video might change what you buy next time. So let's get into it. So before I get into which ones to buy and how much to take, let's look at what omega-3s actually are, because there are a few different types and they're not all the same thing. Omega-3 fatty acids are essential fats, meaning the body cannot make them. That means you have to get them from either food or supplements. And the three main types are EPA, DHA, and ALA. The first one is EPA, and that stands for eicosapentaenoic acid. That's why everyone calls it EPA. And it's the primary anti-inflammatory omega-3. It's found in fatty fish and mainly from marine sources. It has the strongest evidence for cardiovascular health and mood. And the second one is DHA, docosahexaenoic acid, which is why everyone calls it DHA. And this is the structural form of omega-3s. It helps your brain, eyes, nervous system, and they're heavily built around DHA. So it's critical for brain development, especially in infants, but also as we age, it's important for cognitive function. ALA is alpha-linolenic acid. That's found in plant sources like flax seeds, chia seeds, walnut, hemp, and the body can technically convert ALA into EPA and DHA, but I'll explain in a moment the conversion is not very good, so it's not a meaningful source of EPA and DHA, which is what you want. So when people talk about the health benefits of omega-3s like the heart, brain, inflammation, mood, they're almost always talking about EPA and DHA from marine sources. That's what the research is based on, and that's what most people are not getting enough of. Think of ALA as like a raw ingredient. EPA and DHA, they're like the finished products your body actually uses. So why are most people low in omega-3? The short answer is that the foods we used to get have largely disappeared from the modern diet. The best dietary sources of EPA and DHA are fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies, herring, and to get a meaningful amount, you need to eat at least 2 to 3 servings a week. And most people eat significantly less than that. And some people eat none. And it's not just fish. Traditional animal foods like grass-fed beef, pasture-raised eggs also contain EPA and DHA because those animals are eating what they've evolved to eat. But when animals are raised on grain, the omega-3 content is almost non-existent. This is just another part of the industrial food production. The result is that omega-3 deficiency is normal in the modern Western diet. Testing consistently confirms this. And the omega-3 index, the blood test I use with clients, measures EPA and DHA as a percentage of your red blood cells. Optimal is 8% or above, and most people in Australia and the US are sitting somewhere between 4 and 6%, or even less if they don't eat fish. And that gap is significant, and it's not going to close just by having 1 serve of salmon a week. And there's another layer to this that most people haven't heard about, and that's not just about how much omega-3s we're getting, it's also the ratio between omega-6 and omega-3. Omega-6 fatty acids are also essential. Your body needs them. They're found in nuts, seeds, and most vegetable and seed oils. But omega-6 and omega-3 compete for the same metabolic enzymes in the body. So when you have a lot of omega-6 relative to omega-3, it effectively crowds out the omega-3, both in your diet and your cells. In pre-industrial diets, the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio was around 1 to 1, 4 to 1, but in the modern Western diet, it's estimated it's between 15 to 1 to 20 to 1. So that's an enormous shift in a fairly short amount of time. And the primary driver is seed oils like canola, sunflower, soybean, corn oil, which are all extremely high in omega-6s. And these foods are in all processed foods, especially the ultra-processed foods. So it's not that these oils themselves are bad, it's all the processed foods they're found in. This means that addressing omega-3 status involves two things. One is increasing the omega-3 fats, and the other one is reducing the omega-6 and cutting back on the seed oils and ultra-processed foods. So let's talk about the benefits of omega-3 and why you should take them. I want to start with cardiovascular health, because this is where the deepest research is. One of the most reliable effects of omega-3s is significantly reducing triglyceride levels in the body. And we're talking about 20 to 50% reduction. Elevated triglycerides are a direct marker of metabolic dysfunction. And omega-3 at meaningful dosages has one of the most effective nutrients that we can use to help to bring them down. So EPA also has a strong evidence for reducing arterial inflammation and improving the health of the arterial lining. That's the endothelium, and a healthy endothelium is your first defense against heart disease. There was a major study in 2019 called Reduce It that looked at high-dose EPA supplementation at 4 grams a day in people that had elevated triglycerides. And the trial found that 25% reduction in major cardiovascular events, including heart attack, stroke, and that's substantial, and that's just from a nutrient. DHA is the most abundant omega-3 in the brain. It makes up roughly 15 to 20% of the total fatty acid content of the cerebral cortex, which is part of the brain responsible for thinking, memory, and decision making. And DHA is not just passing through, it's literally a structural building block of brain tissue. Your neurons are partly made of it. This has significant implications in both the developing and the aging brain. In pregnancy, DHA is critical for fetal brain development. And in older adults, low DHA is consistently associated with accelerated cognitive decline. Higher omega-3 index levels are associated with better memory, better cognitive performance in many large population studies. For mood and mental health, the story is slightly different. It's EPA rather than DHA that has the strongest evidence. Multiple studies show that EPA at around 1 to 2 grams of EPA a day has clinically meaningful effects on depression. Effects that in some studies are comparable to antidepressants, particularly in people whose their depression is caused by an inflammatory component. With widespread low-grade inflammations being a driver of many chronic illnesses, including depression, that's why it can help. Chronic low-grade inflammation is the common thread running through most chronic diseases. So EPA and DHA are the most direct tools we have for modulating that. And EPA and DHA, they're converted in the body into a family of molecules called specialized pro-resolving mediators. They're called resolvins, protectins, and masterins. These don't just suppress inflammation the way anti-inflammatory drugs do, they actively resolve it. And that's a better long-term effect. For joint disease, some of the earliest strong evidence for omega-3s came from rheumatoid arthritis. Multiple controls show meaningful reductions in stiffness, joint inflammation, and tenderness, and the need for anti-inflammatory medication reduced with omega-3 intake. Eye health. DHA is highly concentrated in the retina, and so DHA is the main one you want to take to improve things like macular degeneration and age-related vision loss. EPA and DHA support the skin barrier, reduce inflammation associated with several anti-inflammatory conditions like eczema and psoriasis. And omega-3 directly reduces the inflammatory signaling coming from visceral fat. And that's one of the mechanisms that can improve insulin sensitivity. So there are a lot of benefits to omega-3, but before supplementing, it's worth knowing where you actually are. And there's a simple, reliable test for that. It's called the omega-3 index, and it measures EPA and DHA as a percentage of your red blood cell fatty acids. Because red blood cells turn over approximately every 120 days, the omega-3 index reflects your average omega-3 status over the past 3 to 4 months. So it's not affected by what you did yesterday or in the past week. The target is 8% or above. This is the range where the cardiovascular and cognitive protective effects are most consistently demonstrated in the research. So how do you get tested? This is not going to be part of the standard test your doctor runs, though you could certainly ask for it. I use a number of different labs, and they're usually specialized labs. And depending on where a client lives, you can easily get this tested in Australia, Europe, and of course the US. OmegaQuant is also a good US option that you can order directly without a practitioner. The reason testing matters more than guessing is simple. Without knowing your baseline, you might be underdosing and not making meaningful changes. Or you might be taking more than you actually need. Testing also lets you recheck in 3 to 4 months to confirm if you've actually moved the needle with the dosages of omega-3s you've been taking. Let's talk about the different types of omega-3 supplements available because they're not all the same. Fish oil is the most widely available and most researched form. It's the form derived from oily fish, typically things like anchovies, sardines, mackerel, or herring, and it contains both EPA and DHA. Fish oil is a solid foundation, but the quality varies enormously and the form matters a great deal. I'll come to that next. Other forms of omega-3 include krill oil from the Antarctic krill. It has its benefits, but it's going to be lower in EPA and DHA. Krill oil contains naturally something called astaxanthin, which is a potent antioxidant that helps protect it from going rancid. Algae oil is the one I want to highlight specifically because this is the original source that fish eat. Fish accumulate omega-3 by eating algae, and by having that oil, you're going straight to the source. It provides good amounts of EPA and DHA. Algae oil is also fully vegan, and so if you don't like fishy taste, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, algae oil is the best choice for you, though it usually doesn't have as much EPA and DHA as a standard fish oil supplement. Cod liver oil is another traditional supplement that's been around for years. It does have EPA and DHA, not as much as fish oil. Also has vitamin A and vitamin D, which can be a bonus. You just have to watch out if you're pregnant that you don't get too much vitamin A. I would recommend omega-3 supplements from fish oils or algae oil if you're pregnant. So if you're buying fish oils, this is one of the most important things you're going to get from this video. And it's something that the supplement industry doesn't make very easy to find out on their labels. Fish oil naturally occurs in what's called a triglyceride form. That is how omega-3 exists in fish tissue, and it's the form the body is designed to absorb and use. When fish oil is manufactured and concentrated to get the highest EPA and DHA numbers on the label, it typically goes through a process that converts it into what's known as an ethyl ester form. The fatty acids get attached to an ethanol molecule instead of a glycerol backbone. It's a cheaper manufacturing shortcut that allows for higher concentrations to be achieved more easily and cheaply. The problem is that ethyl ester fish oil has approximately 30 to 50% lower bioavailability than the triglyceride form, particularly if it's taken without a fat-containing meal. Doesn't mean it's ineffective, it's just not the most effective form. Here's the practical consequence. 2 products on the shelf can both say 1,000 milligrams of EPA and DHA on the label. One's in the triglyceride form and one's in the ethyl ester form. They look identical, but one is delivering significantly more of the omega-3 to your cells than the other. And how do you tell which is which? If it says triglyceride form or TG form or reesterified triglyceride, that's what you want. If it says ethyl ester or EE, or if it doesn't say anything at all, which is most products, it's almost certainly ethyl ester because manufacturers who use the triglyceride form tend to want to tell you all about it. This is the most single common reason I see with clients who have been taking fish oil for years and they still show low omega-3 index when we test. They weren't taking a useless product, but they were absorbing significantly less than they thought, probably from a cheaper product. And this is something else that I want to address, and especially from people who are vegetarian or vegan, and that's the assumption that eating flaxseed, chia seeds, or walnuts provides adequate omega-3. These foods contain ALA, which is the alpha-linolenic acid, and that's the plant form of omega-3. But it's a precursor and it's not the active form. As I mentioned earlier, the body has to convert that to EPA and DHA before it can use it. And that conversion rate is poor. On average, the body converts somewhere between 5 and 10%. There are also other factors that make this conversion less efficient. And that could be a high omega-6 intake, which is a lot for many people. And there's also some genetic variants that can reduce the conversion capacity further. And other nutrient deficiencies like zinc can impair that process. So if you're a vegetarian or vegan, you really want to go for the algae oil. And if you're taking fish oils and you still have a low omega-3 index, but you're taking a good form, it could be that you're just underdosing. It's one of the most common widespread problems. Most standard fish oil capsules contain somewhere between 300 and 500 milligrams of EPA and DHA combined. If you're taking one of these per day, you're getting around a third to maybe half of what you may need. And 2 capsules of a low concentration product isn't a therapeutic dose. So what you're looking for is not the total amount of omega-3, like 1,000 milligrams. You're looking for the EPA and DHA content. Have a look at the bottle that you're taking and look for the EPA and DHA in milligrams, and that's the number that matters. So to summarize, the key quality criteria: make sure you get the triglyceride or re-esterified triglyceride form. Make sure you're getting enough of the EPA, DHA, ideally sourced from small fish species like anchovies. So some of the brands that are available internationally that meet these standards would be brands like Nordic Naturals. They're probably one of the best known brands around the world. Other brands would be Carlson Labs are very good, Thorn Research, Designs for Health, and for clients in Australia, Designs for Health is available there, Metagenics, Orthoplex. There's a number of very good brands available. I would probably avoid the brands that are on a super cheap, too good to be true, especially if they're in clear containers that you might find in a drugstore or pharmacy somewhere. So how much should you take? Well, the answer depends on your omega-3 index. If you haven't been tested, taking 2 to 3 capsules a day is probably ideal. But once you get tested, you'll be able to know how much you need to take to get your levels to the optimal level. It also depends on whether you eat fish or not. So for general maintenance, you want to get around 1 to 2 grams of combined EPA and DHA a day. This is great to maintain your levels. Will have an anti-inflammatory and a cardiovascular support. So if you're correcting a deficiency, so if you're 6% or below, I typically recommend 2 to 3 grams of EPA and DHA combined, and then retest after 3 to 4 months to see how much your index has improved. And for therapeutic purposes, like if you have elevated triglycerides, significant inflammation, or cardiovascular issues, you want to go for around that 3 to 4 grams a day of EPA and DHA. At these days, you're approaching what was used in the Reduce It trial. Always take your omega-3 supplements with a meal that contains a little bit of fat, and this will help with absorption, particularly for the ethyl ester products. If you have the triglyceride form, it's not as important, but it's still helpful to do anyway. And omega-3s have mild blood thinning properties, especially with higher dosages. So if you're taking 3 grams a day, it's worth telling your doctor, and just be careful if you're on an anticoagulant medication like warfarin or even aspirin. So let's focus now on the step-by-step action plan. Step 1, get tested, don't guess. Check your omega-3 index, and knowing the number will help you understand how much fish or omega-3 you need to take to increase your levels. Check what you're currently taking. If you're already supplement, pick up the bottle and just check the dose of EPA, DHA, and look at whether it's the triglyceride or the esterified form. And if it doesn't say, it's probably the ethyl ester, which you don't want. Step 3, upgrade your supplement if needed. And if you're currently on the ethyl ester product or a low-dose supplement, consider switching to a triglyceride form. Step 4 is eat more fatty fish. 2 to 3 serves per week of salmon, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. It's going to make a significant difference. And if you eat lots of fish, you probably don't even need to supplement. And then step 5 is reduce seed oils like canola, sunflower, soybean, corn oil, especially in ultra-processed foods. You can get some good quality sunflower oil, for example. We're mainly trying to reduce down the processed food versions. Just shift towards things like olive oil, avocado oil, butter, ghee. They're ideal. And step 6 is just to retest again in 4 months' time to make sure that you've moved the needle in the right direction and you're getting enough omega-3s. And if you're vegan or vegetarian, go for an algae oil, not flaxseed oil, and focus on reducing down some of those omega-6s, which are often high on a vegan diet. And if your main focus is to take omega-3s to improve your cardiovascular health, heart health, watch this video next on the cardiozoomer test, which is the best test to assess all the markers that can affect your cardiovascular health.